where we unpack complex topics and try to pull out the most important insights for you. Today, we're plunging into a truly fascinating and honestly kind of unsettling subject. What happens when your own body turns against itself? You know, we always hear about our immune system being this incredible internal army, right? Always on guard, protecting us from invaders, constantly scanning for threats, vigilant. But what happens when that super sophisticated defense system suddenly decides you are the enemy? It's a chilling thought.
It really is. And what's truly fascinating here, scientifically speaking, is that we're talking about autoimmunity. These aren't just, random flukes. They're a whole class of conditions where your body's immune system, the very thing designed to protect you, mistakenly attacks your own healthy cells and tissues.
Yeah.
Think of it like a country's military suddenly deciding to bomb its own cities, its own people, not some external threat.
Yeah, that's a powerful image. And this isn't some super rare thing either, is it? Our sources make it clear we're talking about a whole spectrum of diseases here. Things like type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, lupus, Crohn's disease. The list goes on and on, really.
Yeah,
it really feels like a fundamental betrayal, doesn't it? Your immune system thinks a perfectly normal part of you is, well, an invader.
Absolutely. And this raises a really critical question for us. How does such a vital, finely tuned system make such a profound and frankly devastating mistake? So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the mechanics behind this internal betrayal. We'll also look into the surprising evolutionary reasons why these diseases seem to stick around and what it all means for you.
Okay, let's dig into that. The material we looked at describes the immune system almost like this omnipresent, slightly terrifying force. Billions of microscopic, like nuclear weapons and kamikaze bombers, constantly scanning everything, every tissue, bone, fluid. But the real trouble starts when it misidentifies self, what's actually you, as the enemy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the most basic level, life is built on proteins, right?
Yeah.
Each protein has a very precise, unique shape designed for a specific job, breaking down food, carrying oxygen, copying DNA, you name it. Your body makes a huge number of these, something like 100,000 different kinds, each with its own distinct molecular shape. And your immune system, well, it evolved over millions of years to constantly check these protein shapes. It's looking for shapes that are not you.
Yep.
Autoimmunity kicks off when your soldier cells, these dedicated defenders, suddenly flag your own healthy, natural proteins as belonging to an enemy. A dangerous invader.
Right. And here's where it gets really wild, according to our sources. Our bodies have this whole process, almost like a murder university for young immune cells. Sounds pretty intense.
It sounds brutal, but it's absolutely vital. It's this ruthless training ground, specifically designed to stop this exact danger attacking yourself. So these young immune cells go through incredibly rigorous testing. If, during this education, they show that they recognize the shapes of your own proteins, they're immediately flagged as dangerous. And executed, removed from the system.
Wow.
It's a drastic step, but necessary for survival. But, sometimes just through sheer random dumb luck, one gets through, one slips past the guards.
So you're saying even with this death sentence hanging over them, some cells that could cause autoimmunity can actually make it out into the body?
Precisely. In fact, it's almost certain you have millions of these potentially rogue cells just quietly patrolling your body right this second. They carry the latent potential to trigger an autoimmune disease. But there's another way this can get started too, involving external enemies. Some bacteria and viruses, they've actually evolved proteins that look extremely similar to our own. They kind of need to do this to interact with our cells to survive and replicate. But it also acts like camouflage, helps them hide from our immune system. For these microbes, your body is like a dangerous jungle full of predators, your immune cells. So they try to blend in, wearing shapes that look familiar.
Okay, so we've got two key things going on. The immune system can make mistakes in training its cells.
Yep.
And invaders can sometimes trick the system by looking like us. Sounds like a recipe for disaster. But our sources were clear that even this isn't usually enough to start the war. There's a spark needed, right? A trigger.
That's right. The final ingredient seems to be what our sources call a trigger event, combined with, well, a colossal case of bad luck. No. And the trigger could be almost anything that just generally ramps up your body's defenses. A common cold, maybe the flu, even a small cut, or maybe a period of high stress. Any kind of infection or significant immune response floods your body with these signaling molecules called cytokines. These are like alarm bells, basically telling your whole system, okay, this is serious, gear up, this is a real fight. It wakes everything up, puts it on high alert.
Okay, so the whole system's on high alert, ready for anything. What happens next in this sort of chain reaction?
So now, specialized cells, we can call them intelligent cells, start gathering protein shapes from the battlefield wherever the infection or inflammation is happening. These shapes are basically intel. physical information about what's going on. They take these shapes back to your lymph nodes. Think of those as information hubs, distribution centers for the immune system. And inside the lymph nodes, your heavy hitters, specific white blood cells called T cells, are constantly passing through, examining these shapes being presented. Normally, if a T cell recognizes the shape of a known invader, boom, the system activates a very specific attack, and usually within days, the threat is neutralized.
But this is the point where things can go catastrophically wrong, isn't it? Where the bad luck comes in.
Exactly. This is where the worst things happen in the worst kind of way. By incredibly bad luck, maybe one of those intelligence cells picked up a piece of a perfectly healthy cell that just happened to die nearby during the commotion, collateral damage. Or maybe there was a bacterium involved that had a protein shape so similar, almost identical to one of your own healthy proteins. And then, just by pure coincidence, a single T cell, one of those rare escapees from the murder university, maybe trained months or even years ago, that just happens to recognize that specific self-protein shape, passes through that exact lymph node at that exact moment, and it gets activated. Mistaken.
Whoa, wow, just one cell.
Just one initially. But that single misguided T cell then kicks off a massive immune cascade against your own body. It starts cloning itself thousands, millions of times. It recruits other immune cells to join the fight. And this whole army streams out into your healthy tissue, hunting for that enemy protein.
And once they get there, I mean, the enemy protein is everywhere, right? Because it's part of you.
That's the devastating part. Once they arrive in your tissue, they see nothing but enemies. The protein they're programmed to destroy is a normal part of your cells. So to them, it looks like a massive invasion. They spread out, attacking, killing your healthy tissue. It becomes this awful cycle, what our sources call a self-enforcing machine of destruction. It just doesn't stop. Because the more enemies they find, which is just your own tissue, the more they get stimulated, the more they clone, the more they call for backup. There's no off switch. It's a relentless internal war.
God, that sounds brutal. So how bad is this internal war? Our sources mentioned over 100 different autoimmune diseases affecting pretty much any part of the body. I imagine they look very different depending on what's being attacked. Can you give us some examples?
Absolutely. The effects vary hugely depending on the target tissue. So take multiple sclerosis, or MS. In MS, the immune cells specifically attack the myelin sheath. That's the protective insulation around your nerve cells. Think of it like the rubber coating on an electrical wire.
Okay.
When that insulation gets damaged, the nerve signals can't travel properly. They might slow down, get distorted, or just stop. They short circuit. And that leads to symptoms like numbness, muscle weakness or cramps, problems with vision, balance, even concentration.
And type 1 diabetes is another really serious one, right?
Yes, very much so. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system goes after and destroys the specific cells in your pancreas, the beta cells that produce insulin. Without insulin, your cells can't take up glucose from your blood for energy, so your cells are literally starving while your blood sugar skyrockets and your blood can turn dangerously acidic. It's life-threatening without constant management. Then you have something like rheumatoid arthritis. Here, angry immune cells invade your joints. They release chemicals that literally dissolve cartilage and even bone over time. Leads to terrible pain, swelling, stiffness, and often joint deformation. And lupus, well, lupus is sometimes described as a kind of body-wide blitzkrieg. It can attack almost any organ system: skin, joints, kidneys, heart, brain, you name it. It causes these unpredictable flare-ups of painful, widespread inflammation and damage. Really debilitating.
Wow. What strikes me listening to that is that across nearly all these conditions, our sources mention this symptom of crushing fatigue and exhaustion.
Right.
Why is that so common, even if, say, only the joints or the pancreas are the main target?
That's a really important point. It's because whenever you're genuinely sick with the flu, for example, your immune system releases those cytokine signals we talked about earlier. Yeah. And part of what those signals do is tell your brain and body to basically shut down non-essential activity and rest, conserve energy to fight the infection. That's why you feel wiped out when you're sick. Now, the cruel irony with autoimmunity is that even though the immune system itself is the cause of the illness, it still sends out those same "I'm fighting a major battle, shut everything down" signals. So you feel that profound flu-like exhaustion, that bone-deep fatigue. But the infection is your own body attacking itself. It's a constant state of internal conflict that drains your energy.
That's incredibly tough. Your body forcing you to rest because it's fighting itself. It makes you wonder, though, if these diseases are so harmful, causing so much suffering, why hasn't evolution just, gotten rid of the genes that contribute to them? Our sources said maybe up to 1 in 10 people in industrialized countries has one. That seems really high for something so negative.
It does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it? But if you zoom out and look at the bigger evolutionary picture, it starts to make a kind of grim sense. It's a trade-off. We know most, probably all, autoimmune diseases have a genetic component. Certain gene variants make you more susceptible. But fundamentally, what these diseases represent is an immune system that is, well, more aggressive, more reactive.
Right.
And while that extra aggression is mostly bad news for us now, in our relatively clean modern world, for most of human history, it was actually a huge advantage.
You mean an advantage against infections, like plagues and things?
Exactly that. For the vast majority of human existence, infectious diseases were the #1 killer, by far. We had terrible pandemics sweeping through populations, regularly wiping out huge percentages of people. Think about the Black Death. The sources we look at mention some really fascinating research using ancient DNA. They analyzed samples from London cemeteries from before, during, and after the Black Death.
Wow, really? What did they find?
They found that people who carried certain gene variants that today significantly increase the risk for Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune condition affecting the gut, those people seem to have survived the plague at a much higher rate. They were less likely to die from it.
Whoa. So the very genes that might make someone susceptible to Crohn's today actually helped their ancestors survive the Black Death. That's an incredible twist. The genetic traits causing autoimmunity now might be the legacy of surviving past pandemics.
It seems very likely. Evolution doesn't really plan for the future, does it? It just selects for what works right now, what helps you survive the most immediate threats. If having a slightly more aggressive immune response, thanks to certain gene variants, made your ancestors more likely to survive killer infections like the plague or tuberculosis, well, evolution didn't care if those same genes might cause problems like arthritis or lupus hundreds of years later in a totally different environment. It's actually quite humbling, isn't it? If you have an autoimmune disease, it's possible you're only alive today because those risky genes helped your ancestors survive when their neighbors were dying from infection.
That really puts it in perspective. And then, like our sources said just a hot second ago in evolutionary time, we completely changed the game. Hygiene, sanitation, antibiotics, vaccines, modern medicine. We basically conquered most of the major infectious diseases that used to kill us off in droves, which is amazing.
A monumental achievement.
But now we're left with these potentially over-aggressive immune systems coded by genes that were once lifesavers. And in our modern world, without those constant, massive infectious threats to fight, that aggression sometimes, through bad luck and a trigger, just turns inward. All those nuclear weapons and kamikaze bombers end up targeting us. So, wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway here? We've seen how this incredibly complex system, our immune system, designed purely for protection, can somehow, through this perfect storm of genetics, maybe an environmental trigger, and just sheer bad luck, become our own worst enemy.
Yeah, I think it really underscores the incredibly intricate dance between our biology, our deep evolutionary past, and the world we live in now. It's a powerful reminder that even our most vital internal systems are running on ancient programming that was shaped by pressures very different from today's, and sometimes that leads to conflict. Misalignment. Understanding this helps us grasp why these diseases are so challenging.
It really does. Thinking about this whole thing, what really sticks with me is how a system that evolved purely for survival can, when the world changes around it, create so much internal strife, so much suffering. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If evolution often settles for good enough survival traits rather than perfect long-term health, what other biological trade-offs like this might be hiding inside us? What other echoes of our evolutionary past are still shaping our health and lives today in ways we don't even realize yet?